Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Got to start again, Shane. I got nothing.
Nothing at all. Nope.
All right, I'm plugged in now. I think that was the plug. That's what it was. You're good now. You heard the click? Yep, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Not really, I don't think.
So you're here. And the volume goes just the opposite.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, it goes the opposite way of the way it used to. Good?
Okay. Yep.
Okay,
right.
we're rolling.
Okay.
All right.
Let's start again, Shane.
Welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
It is Nebraska Preps Postgame. Thursday. Today's Thursday.
I think so, yeah.
I get them. Listen,
I know you're very deep in camp.
They're starting to kind of run together, so it's like, what are we really doing? But I believe it's a Thursday. We are deep in camp, man. So welcoming you in on another week. Now, this time, I think we can commit. Fall NEB preps will be on Tuesdays, as long as pressers are okay. Is that the caveat?
Yeah, that's what we got to figure out because I think volleyball press conferences are going to be a Tuesday now. So I don't know. We'll have to figure out. We'll see what our schedules are.
I don't even have any problems with Monday if you don't, but I just want to keep us safe because I know Monday's going to be a football presser too.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. I have no idea.
So I guess I take back the whole safely
can't
safe
commit
thing.
to it, but we'll figure it out. We will get you shows.
We won't go further than Wednesday because then it goes from a preview to almost a recap.
Games already happened.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But here we go as we transition into football. As you hear my voice, it is El Terrible. It is terrible. But I'll condition back into it. It's like everything else.
So is that the sign of a good practice or a bad one? So
maybe it's just that I talk too much. I don't know. Because I feel like we're moving at a good clip. You know, it's an experienced bunch. So that helps, especially defensively, where we bring back 9 starters. So now we're into where we can kind of play some games and add wrinkles, and the verbiage is pretty short. You know, I kind of hearken it to like, you know, Creighton basketball, where they will be 2-3 steps ahead in terms of their efficiency, just because there's some familiarity there.
And you've got guys like Christian and Keenan Cotton and
Campbell
are guys that have been in the program for a year now. So
Great
now
call.
They not only are they coming back as returning impact players, but they've been in the program. They know all the standards and everything. Now they're just building off that.
Yeah. So that's spot on. That's 100% spot on. I was telling the guys this morning. It's seldom that you lose a great coach like Coach Freund and get another great coach in Coach Lamanji. And their styles are very, very opposite, but the message is the same. It is chemistry. It is brotherhood. It is attention to detail. Love one another, groom young men. But the manner in which they do it is vastly, vastly different. Coach Lamanji, you know, he's the love on you. Put your arm around you. Make sure he's talking to you. He's going to get your attention. Coach Freund is kind of the cerebral assassin. Kind of the wait and see mode. He's very good at discernment, so he knows how to talk to different people different ways. It's more than one way to skin a cat, but it's been something. It has definitely been something.
How's it feel now? This obviously you guys started camp a little later than some of the others because you're not playing a week 0 game, but getting closer now.
It's really, really good, right? We're starting to get into. We will have a good, thorough scrimmage tomorrow. Saturday will be we'll still go in full pads, but it will be a conditioning, go over, not walk through, jog through. We have pictures and all that, so you got to get all the extra out of the way. And then even though we don't play next week, we'll get on a regular game week where Monday will be install. Tuesday, Wednesday work days. Thursday will be our actual scrimmage, and then Friday we'll go back. We'll flip flop Thursday, Friday. But we want to get out and see prep in Bellevue West, and there's so many. Well, not so many. There's a few good games in week 0. And this is one of the things, I don't know how you'd feel about this. Maybe you'd say it's how much experience you have. But do you want 95% of the time, I would say, get the game under your belt. This time I'll take the film just because we're so experienced.
Yeah.
Like I'll take the film of getting prep and another week of film of Bellevue West because we have them in week 3.
Yeah.
Then I will opening up against prep as our first game and having it be their second.
Yeah, how about the opener of the season for prep?
Yeah, they got it. So
and West Side, Gretna, right?
Yeah.
And then Millard
North,
and
then Millard West.
That's it.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, you could have a very, very good prep team and the record may not reflect it, but they're young too.
They're very young.
I used to coach a couple of the guys in back, like Tay. Some of these guys that are maybe can play as freshmen. I don't remember prep having 5 or 6, 7 freshmen that could dress and contribute. That's rare territory over there on Western.
But as we kind of dive into our Class A preview, at least here this week, I think we got to start with the Warriors right off the top, and reigning champion running it back. Like you said, 9 stars back on defense, got a lot back on offense too. Arguably got the best quarterback in the state, in Anthony Rizak. Over 2,200 yards last year, 67% completion rate. Ran for over 1,100 yards, 19 touchdowns through the air, 19 touchdowns on the ground. Just a phenomenal season, dual threat. And we were talking beforehand, he was your main running threat last year. Sounds like Jamez Ross coming back at running back is poised for a great season. Really made a big leap in the offseason. Ran for 687 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, a little under 5 yards a carry. Also caught 13 balls for 160 yards and 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're kind of a dual threat guy out of the backfield, and sounds like you expect a big year out of him.
Yeah, so I think you could make the case. All biased aside, if our offensive kind of MVP so far are in camp, like if I just go by, you give shout outs after practice and the peers can shout out guys. If it hasn't been Anthony Rizak or Caleb Benning on offense, you could easily make the case it's been Jamez Ross. He may have had the best summer of any of the aforementioned. He's down 21 pounds. He played at 202, 203 last year. He's about 182 right now. He looks fantastic. He had the real good 7-on-7 stretch with the high schools, and he's got that burst back. He's very elusive. He's a really good downhill runner, and he was disappointed, in how he played a year ago, and he put the burden on himself to get back in peak physical shape. And I'm telling you, he is. We have to figure out how to run the ball from the running back spot. Yeah. It can't just be Rizak and QB run game, right? It's got to be. We have to be able to hand the football off with traditional run game, and he's going to play a big factor now.
And then I guess another question is, you got so many dynamic athletes.
Yeah.
Is how many of these guys play 2 ways, and how often does that work? Because you've got a lot of options. Because obviously, Teddy Rizak, leading returning receiver, 414 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. Caleb, we saw what he did, just playing 4 games in the state title game at receiver. Keenan Cotton kind of got his feet wet last year, caught 15 balls. He's obviously got some speed there. So you got 3 guys. Those are your 3 best defensive backs as well coming back. So, and they also might be your 3 best receivers. Trevor Spady, another guy that can play
great call,
defense and offense, big tight end. You talked about how versatile you expect him to be for you guys.
Christian Jones, Grant Beitler,
tight end too, both ways. Like, you got a lot of guys. I think that those are the decisions you guys are going to have to figure out. All right, what's the best way to keep these guys fresh, but also get the most out of them?
Yeah, that's
a good problem to have.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, and it's a good distinction because people on the surface, and this is, me, I'm always going to keep it 100, right? On the surface, it seems like a luxury, but what you have to have is you have to put your egos to the side, because as a staff, you have to game plan. Hey, listen, we're in 20 personnel or we're in 21 personnel and we're going to go 10. And this week we have to do this. And, this is how we have to have our balance, or because we have to play like this on defense, this is how we'll have to attack it on offense. And guys are willing to put that aside. Some days we'll be in 12 personnel. Well, you'll see Spady and Christian Jones playing a lot of tight end and Jamez Ross in the backfield. That means defensively I have to have a couple of other outside linebackers ready, Nick Anglem or Quentin Warren or some of these guys. And those guys have to give up a little on defense, Christian and Trevor. Some weeks it'll be just the opposite. Yeah. Hey, we're in 10 personnel, right? We're not using a lot of tight ends, so we'll be heavy here defensively. So I think the communication and humility, like from the staff, will be pretty cool too. We got to figure out our special teams too. So that's kind of the thing. We were pretty spoiled last 2 years.
Hard to replace what you had at kicker there.
And it wasn't just Alvano, right? I mean, Will DePuter, our snapper.
Long snapper, he's in Nebraska too.
And, it's funny. So I talked to Will Monday, and he was really fighting to make the 105. And he said when he got to
120 now.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. When he got to camp, he was asking some of those collegiate guys, those returners, hey, what were your pop times? What were your get off times? And, they were telling him his times. And he's like, man, as we were doing that in high school a year and a half ago. And I used to tell him last year, I said, you guys have no idea how good you, Marty Mormino, our punter, who was the holder, Will was the snapper, and obviously Tristan as our kicker, are good, right? You could cheat the protection a little because you're getting it off so fast in the punt game. Your place kicking game was really crisp. Those holds and snaps were always on point. We've had to work really, really hard. Fortunately, we're at a school that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Heck, our special teams, the second practice, which can only be an hour and you can't sprint, and it can only be, 45% of that, 50% we give to special teams. They get 20% in the mornings, right? So it's like special teams is really, really important to us.
And how you feeling about trenches, obviously, on both sides? You got some guys coming back, but you also lost some key players.
We did. Only 2 starters coming back on offense, but we got another 3 that played a ton on the offensive line. So we'll be able to play 7 right now. So I feel pretty good about that. Maybe 8, depending on what we do with Cam Bell, right? We talk about another two-way guy. He's arguably one of the best defensive linemen in the state. We can flip him over and play guard for us. Our starting linebacker, Johnny Hurtado, has made the move, can play some guard for us. His brother did it as a senior in 2019 and 20 with Cole Payton, where he went from fullback to O-line, D-line. It's being unselfish is in the Hurtado name. So, offensive line is another place that we got to continue to grow.
Yeah. And obviously Westside bringing a lot back. Not necessarily the case for their opponent in the state title game with Gretna. You lose a guy like Zane Flores, who basically defined that program the last few years, but they had a lot of seniors. That defense was absolutely stacked with dynamic seniors. But they've got some good pieces back. Obviously, Flores is one of the best we've seen, but Alex Wilcoxon, I think, is ready to step in there.
100% good. So competitive, such a gamer. I'd ride with him.
They just found ways to use him last year because he was a good enough football player that, he's our backup quarterback, but we need to get him on the field. He threw 6 passes, completed all 6 for 44 yards and a touchdown, ran the ball 16 times for 138 yards and a touchdown, and also caught 2 passes for 45 yards and a touchdown. Oh, and also played cornerback there.
Really good player.
31 tackles and 5 interceptions.
And, they get a healthy Joey Veith back, who just committed to South Dakota State. Calvin Jansen up front, who's a guy that a lot of people like, right? I mean, he's on a lot of people's radar as a big-time Power 5 prospect. They got Weber back.
Weber back at running back.
Yeah, a little pocket Hercules, man. A little muscle head. He really runs the rock.
Almost 1,000 yards last year while playing with a quarterback who threw it as much as Zane did. 928 yards and 12 touchdowns. Also a threat on the backfield, caught 16 passes, 167 yards and 2 scores. So
they're so well coached too. Like, I mean, it's a very difficult team to prepare for and play against.
Yeah, and I think Michael Sheaf was their top returning receiving threat. 16 passes, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns last year. But they've got so much to replace on defense. The top 8 tacklers are gone, and 29 of their 31 sacks are gone. And that's That's what was so special about this defense. Their
And
front,
the Corver Demas. I mean, those guys are
Mason Goldman,
Monster.
Harrison Weber. Like they had so many dudes in that front seven that just made life miserable for opposing teams. So that's a lot to replace. Obviously, the school split too. They had some guys that went over to East.
In my head, I don't know how you feel about this, but in my head, I don't think they'll feel that until next year.
Those are more young guys.
But you're right. I mean, ultimately, we've seen how school splits work.
Smaller pool.
It can take a little out of you.
But yeah, obviously, good coaching staff out there. You still expect them to be in the mix. They've got enough playmakers there. It's just a matter of can we.
I still think that's a top 5 program. I really do. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, and we'll get to the Elkhorn South and obviously probably the number 1 or the number 2 team in the state, depending on what you think about Westside, Bellevue West, who up next.
Let's get to them next. Obviously, we know all the skill position talent they're returning. Danny Kalen, almost 3,200 yards last year, completed 64% of his passes, 36 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions. Had 2 touchdowns on the ground, started to run a little bit more as the season went on. Isaiah McMorris, almost 1,300 yards last year, 90 receptions.
But became their primary receiver. He was wide receiver 1.
And early on in the season, he was kind of like he was still figuring out, obviously transferring over from Illinois, figuring out like the standards, what it took to play there. Early on, it wasn't like you'd have a drop or run a wrong route, pull him out. Season went on, he locked in and just became so dynamic for them. And obviously, you've got Davon Hall on the other side, almost 1,000 yards himself last year, had 11 touchdowns, 16 yards per reception.
Weird when you have a 4-star that some people consider an afterthought. He is uber talented, and he looks the part. I think the track season really helped him and kind of dialed back in, committing to being at Bellevue West. He's a specimen.
And you got Ben Goodwater, kind of the slot receiver.
He's the X factor. Yeah. Really. So as a coach playing those guys, watching him on tape, he's the guy that we got to account for. And we'll see whatever it is that they do in the backfield. But I really, really like Goodwater.
Yeah, and CJ Goff is probably that guy at running back coming back, at least their most experienced at. Because obviously they had some injuries and some issues at running back last year where they ran through a few different guys. And basically everybody they plugged in at that spot produced. And Goff last year, 559 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, caught 11 balls for 67 yards and another touchdown through the air, capable of being a dual threat guy out of that backfield, which you got to be able to do in that Bellevue West offense. So they got a lot of pieces back. Offensive line, obviously, they were kind of figuring out as they went last year. They got some guys back now.
Yeah, I mean, their top 8 guys are back.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
Yep.
Guys like Jacob Baroque.
See if they can get a full season out of Jacob after kind of getting his feet wet last year.
So I saw him 2 weeks ago in Lincoln at the barbecue for the recruiting deal. And Jacob, I don't know if you're going to recognize him. He looks sensational. He is trim. He was smiling. He very good. And you know where my heart is for Jacob. He looks sensational. Tough situations going on with the family and coping with a lot, but young Mr. O'Rourke looked fantastic.
Happy for him that he made that decision last year, because it seems like he really has. Now that he's in, he's like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Isn't it weird how universally, like, we're not for, obviously I'm at Westside, but I'm for kids. You're obviously for kids. Universally, coaches across the metro, they cheer for Jacob O'Rourke. Doesn't matter if he's a friend or a foe. Like you cheer for Jacob O'Rourke.
So that offense is going to be good. Question is going to be defense. New coordinator, got some changes there. Some Asher Jenkins is probably kind of the first guy
he's a stud
to name on defense.
Absolute stud.
56 tackles last year, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, an interception, 3 passes defense, blocked an extra point.
Very, very versatile.
Kind of all over the place.
Yeah, very versatile. He's kind of a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Master of a lot. I know that's not how the saying goes, but he's pretty legit.
And TJ Whaley's a guy, tight end. He can play some defense, I believe, too. Stanley Hayter, kind of edge rusher there. Had 5.5 tackles for loss, couple of sacks, forced a couple of fumbles last year. Arif Evans Jr. They got a couple of young guys, Caprice Keith, Arif Evans Jr. that got their feet wet. Arif especially played down the stretch last year at defensive back. So guys are going to be sophomores that I think will play more this year and be an important part of what they do. So we'll see kind of how that defense can kind of make up some ground this year, because, again, obviously we know how dynamic that offense is going to be.
There's lots of places to go. We got to go to Elkhorn South, though, because I think, like, if there's a radar and it kind of beeps, it's like boop, boop. They're under the radar, but not for coaches in the Metro that know what this Coach Rosenberg and his staff are about. That's a fantastic team on paper.
Yeah, it's tough because like they lost, like Cole Ballard and Jackson Moore Swan. Those guys were, and obviously the defensive line, the seniors they had up front on defense and played a little bit of offense too. Like those guys were like the faces of that program. They did so much for them. But you kind of look a little bit closer, and they got some guys around those guys that maybe weren't the featured guys last year, but showed that they're capable of being dynamic players and helping them out. And obviously, it starts with the quarterback and Carson Ronner.
He's sensational.
Committed to Holy Cross for college, I believe it was. Last year, at the first year as a starter there, completed almost 60% of his passes, 1,602 yards, 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Carried the ball 43 times for 468 yards and 4 scores. So he's the guy that in year 2, and obviously part of it is the skill guys and everything. Everybody's got to do their part, but for them to be as good as you think they can be, he's got to step forward. There is no Cole Ballard. They've got some options at running back, but nobody's going to be what Cole Ballard was for that team last year. So Ronner's now got to be not the changeup. He's got to be the guy that drives their offense. Last year was kind of like, we're going to hammer you with Ballard, and then Ronner's going to hit you with the deep ball to Moore Swan there. And we'll get the touchdown over
absolutely.
the top.
So if they can get vertical in that passing game and kind of add that dimension, that's because they're going to be good up front, right? They're just strong. Little Prohaska, I shouldn't say Little Prohaska, but he's his own man now. And I saw where he committed to Northwest Missouri State. That is a heck of a get, and a team that's used to winning titles, man. So good on those guys for grabbing Prohaska.
Yeah, in the backfield, Brady Bousquet and Gavin Shanahan, who both played last year in backup roles.
Shanahan will make a case maybe for one of the top 20-25 guys in the backfield. Good player. Really good player.
Yeah, he had 247 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. Bousquet, who's going to be a senior, or is a senior now, or school's basically starting up. Crazy. 364 yards and 5 touchdowns. So both those guys got some good experience last year, kind of mixed them in there behind Ballard, and now those guys will be the ones kind of carrying the load for them. Got to figure out the skill positions. Luke Hoskinson's top returning receiver, 315 yards and a touchdown last year. Again, Moore Swan was like anytime it's like you need to go to the air, it's going to Jackson. And more often than not, he came down with the ball. So they're going to have to find some guys to fill that out. I believe Aiden Stratus is a guy committed.
Like him a ton.
Going to play probably both ways in the back end for them out wide. Mentioned Prohaska. He'll play some tight end for them as well as defensive line. And they've up front, they got Ben Gustafson, giant tackle.
Such a big kid.
Murphy, Austin Stroh, Parker. Like they got a lot of guys up front on the offensive line. They, like you said, they should be able to control things in the trenches. And then Murphy, he's going to have a huge year. Obviously, Maverick Noonan was kind of the face of that team. You had Noah Bustard, really good.
Kind of the unsung hero, yeah.
But now Murphy's that main guy. And he had a little bit of everything, 37 tackles, 5 for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, fumble recovery last year. You got Prohaska, who hopefully can put together a full, healthy season, rushing on off that other end. They'll definitely be good on defense again. So, yeah, it's just a matter of kind of, all right, what kind of step forward does Ronner take?
Yeah.
And can he find some dynamic options out wide?
Let me ask you something real quick about them. If you're Coach Rosenberg and that offensive staff, do you just do what you do, or do you try to next level and get some chunk plays in the passing game to get you over the hump? Because they've been close for 3 consecutive years.
It's got to be like the players have to dictate that. If Ronner's showing like, hey, he's consistently making these throws and you got someone that can get open, you got to do it. You got to be versatile on offense to go as far as you got to be able to do it both ways. Kind of the one-dimensional with how dynamic so many of these offenses are. You got to be able to do both. And so that's what I'm talking about. A lot of this, I think, how good they can be comes down to Ronner and the leap that he's going to make, because he's got to be the leader of that team, one of the best returning quarterbacks in the state.
Let's go to Millard and work our way from Pacific to Q to further west of Q. Start with Miller North. I mean, that's a team on paper. That junior class was sensational, right? Everybody loved the freshmen, them as freshmen when they came in with Vermas and Mooberry, and they were pretty star-studded. But man, it just seems like they're better up front than kind of some of the experts think.
Yeah, and again, that's was a team last year that
should have been in the playoffs.
Yeah, they had some. They gave you guys as tough a battle as anybody during the regular season. I was at that one.
Weren't we down at? We were down at the half, right?
Yep.
Yeah. They gave us fits on offense up front. That's for sure.
So yeah, they got. You mentioned some of those young guys like Vermas and
Mooberry.
I know he had some off-season surgery, hoping to see him fully healthy because he played through a lot last year.
And he's still growing, right? He had double labrum surgery. And I like him up front, not as name brandy up front with Miller North, but a team, unfortunately, they're on our schedule. Dealt us fits, but Miller North's a team that I think is will be firmly in the square of people's top 10, but may not garner the attention that they should.
Yeah. And so you look at it, returning their top 3 rushers in carries. And you've got Mooberry, who you can play
a multitude of places.
Only had 14 catches last year because obviously they don't throw it a ton, but it feels like all 14 of those were highlight.
Well, he had a couple on us where he kind of head tapped a few folks before he got banged up, but we definitely got to find where he is on the football field.
Yeah, so we'll see kind of again, how good can they be up front, knowing the type of offense they want to run. You got to be able to control things in the trenches, and then how consistent can they get at quarterback?
It's a very powerful offensive and defensive line. Again, not the name brand star-studded, but really, really good.
Yeah, so we'll see how many of those guys are ready to take a leap, what that look like. But they've definitely got some dynamic athletes,
and they're in a good spot too, right? Mooberry and Vermas are the headliners, but I think the attention goes to the school just to the southwest of them, of the 3 Millard schools, and those are the Patriots at Millard South.
Yeah, and it's a team that it's got a lot coming back experience, but they also got a lot of young guys that are pushing that'll be
hard to replace Koziel, isn't it? We'll see if Coach Wisdom truly has a plug-and-play deal, because Koziel was so good, and they weren't successful last year when he didn't play.
And that was the deal where they Koziel wasn't there. They had to find some other options, and started with Brock Murtaugh, and then he got hurt, and then they cycled through a few different guys. But the silver lining of that is a guy like Jet Tomala got to get his feet wet.
Yeah, that quarterback battle is going to be pretty good, isn't it?
And he's a guy that he came in, and what was that game? Is it Gretna or – I forgot who it was, but when Tomala came in and kind of made his debut, and
as a freshman,
you can see it looks like a freshman out there, but he settled in and he started letting the ball rip as the game went on. Ended up putting up a bunch of yards in that game. Sure, that was huge for him to get that experience, kind of going into the offseason. All right, that's what it takes to be a Class A quarterback.
And I think for him, they have such good offensive concepts. If he gets good command of it, he should have some success, because some of the stuff they do philosophically it's pretty legit. And he gets to sprinkle that in with a guy like Feller and Jackson. He got some options.
Yeah, going to start up front with Nolan Feller in that running game and a good offensive line in front of him. Feller had 764 yards, 6 touchdowns last year. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he runs tough. I know he committed somewhere. I forgot where.
Minnesota State.
There we go. So
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
He kicked our tail, and when we were in 7th and 8th grade, in the junior for the junior Patriots when they won the championship, and just so happens he's my buddy's nephew, so it's like I've been paying attention to him since he's been young.
Yeah, and then Marion Jackson mentioned AJ at receiver there.
They got to replace 5 of their top 6, but if you're going to come back with a young pup that's experienced, take AJ.
491 yards and 5 touchdowns as a freshman, and I think got pretty good chemistry. If Tomala ends up being the guy there, those two same class, they played a lot together this offseason, 7-on-7. And then another guy, kind of young guy, again, to watch out for, another one of those sophomores, tight end, Isaac Jensen. He's got a chance to be a big impact player for them this year. I think he's a guy who had a good offseason. Didn't play much last year, but
I thought you were so dialed in on hoops, man. That's a good one.
Again, like those are the guys that I catch, the dual threat guys. Like Isaac had a good summer in basketball too, and had to miss a lot because he was playing football because that's his main sport. So, but big 6'5", good athlete. So he'll help them out. And then defense, they've got a lot. JR on the defensive line coming back.
So good.
77 tackles as a defensive lineman.
I feel bad. I want to call him Fernando, but I don't know him well enough to go there. But I'll just go with JR. But you ask our staff. You go over to 88th and Pacific and say, hey, who's the one guy that keeps you up at night from a year ago? It's definitely JR.
11 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. Obviously, they lose Lance Rucker, who one of the better ed guys in the state last year. But you bring back him. You bring back Adam Pugh.
Good player. 30
tackles, 8.5 for loss, 5 sacks last year. Then in the back end, you got a guy like DeLon Jones, who had a good offseason for them, playing 7-on-7. Had 5 passes defense, an interception last year, 28 tackles. Nazaire Jasenu, 48 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 passes defense, fumble force, fumble recovery. So you've got experience in the back end and up front on that defensive side of the ball. So yeah, North South, depend on how ready those sophomores are to make the leap and how impactful they can be to kind of round out the depth, but they've got some really good key pieces to build around for sure.
Yeah, let's take it a couple blocks further out west and go with Millard West. Part of that, so we kind of threw them in, and not as a kind of an by the way, but part of that gauntlet of a prep schedule. They bring back Peterson at quarterback. You lose a good young player at quarterback, but how kind of the pieces are in place for them to, if they can get it together up front, maybe can kind of return to what Coach Peterson is used to.
Yeah, and I didn't get to see much of them last year. Kind of who are the guys that you like coming back? They're gonna kind of.
So I think it starts at the quarterback spot with Peterson. He's a good dual threat guy. We saw them. They were so battle tested last year. You know, they played a lot of close games, just trying to get over the hump with kind of what happened. Tough schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, they played a really, really tough schedule. And so they're in the second half of that this year where, you know, the schedule goes in twos and it kind of just flip flops. But you know what, with what I think they're bringing to the table, they're typically well coached. So, I mean, you got to think, I like Keegan Mountain, who's going to be a really, really good player for them, who has been.
Jackson Williams, receiver.
Yeah, is he a handful. Quick as a hiccup. They have really good skill guys. For them, it's, you know, and how Coach Peterson likes to coach, it's all about being in the trenches. So, you know, we'll see how they handle it.
Yeah. We mentioned Creighton Prep, how much they lost. They lost almost everybody. They got Tony Caniglio kind of settled in at quarterback.
Yeah, and I assume he's going to be the guy.
372 yards, 1 touchdown last year, ran the ball 78 yards. You got Michael Burke coming back at tight end, obviously committed to Iowa.
Yeah, he's a handful.
Was more of an inline guy last year. They're going to need him to be more of a receiving threat.
They're going to have to play some young guys.
Yeah, Jacob Ruby at running backs, their leading returning rusher otherwise at running back position with just 77 yards and a touchdown. Zach McClay is a guy on defense coming back. That's their most experienced player. 69 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 2 picks, 3 pass defense, a forced fumble, 3 fumble recovery. So he's all over the place there on that back end. But outside of those guys, there's not a lot of guys coming back that played varsity, got real minutes for them last year. So it's going to be a very young team, and that's going to be very difficult to open the season with what they've got to face. So good luck to them. Definitely going to be well tested by the second half of the year. those young guys will not be young guys anymore because they'll have faced the best that they're going to see.
Now, maybe not the most of the high-end talent. I'll let them sort it out with the school on 20th and Dodge, right, with Central. But probably the most complete team in OPS, if the season started tomorrow, would be the Vikings over there on 38th and Ames.
Yep. You got the quarterback, Sebastian Serco, 1,300 yards last year, 16 touchdowns, 8 picks. Want to see the completion percentage go up a little bit here heading into his junior year. You've obviously you lose a guy like Tayshawn Porter last year.
Yeah.
You got to find some answers in that backfield, especially the way with Coach Martin likes to run that offense. I mean, with the pieces they've got, you almost think like you got to lean into more of an aired out, but that's not what they do. So
with guys like Titan Glassman and Champ Davis,
exactly. Those guys.
O'Neal is kind of a stud. I'll tell you what, Connor O'Neal worked out on us in 7-on-7. A couple of big boy catches. One of the last few really good 3 sports stars. Well, I won't say star. I'm not throwing that around loosely, but he hoops. He's good at basketball. He's good at baseball. He's good at football. He's a guy that will go from one practice, change gears, and go put on another piece of gear. And there's sometimes he'll do football, basketball, and baseball in the same day, especially in summer with Legion Hoops. He'll start with football, go get some shots up with Coach Lichty and basketball, and then at night go play Legion baseball. Connor O'Neal is a throwback and a guy that's really come into his own.
Yeah, Glassman is just a sophomore last year, 447 yards through the air. Champ Davis as a freshman, 218 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns.
Boy, does Champ look the part. He is his face has muscles, right? He looks the part. Champ Davis is a stud.
259 kick return yards as well. Obviously, dynamic returner there. They've got linemen up front. DeAndre Harper just committed. Got some guys coming back there. Defensive line.
Samarius Henderson, you're obviously led by Tyson Terry.
Yep.
That is a big, big offensive line.
Yeah. Terry led them in tackles last year. The defensive linemen, 54 of them, 11 for loss, 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. Again, obviously committed Nebraska there. Samarius Henderson, big 300-pound nose tackle there, 226 tackles, 5.5 for loss. And then you've got obviously talent in the back end too. You've got Donovan Jones committed Nebraska, 42 tackles, 2 picks, 7 passes defense last year. Michael Johnson, 53 tackles last year. Had a pick, 3 pass defense. You got Nolan Venner at linebacker.
Good player.
6 tackles.
Kind of flies under the radar.
BJ Lewis as a freshman last year played a lot. 42 tackles, 6.5 for loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. That's like have a line for a freshman linebacker. Yeah. So they got a lot of pieces coming back. Again, it's just a matter of, all right, kind of what does that running game look like, and how does Martin kind of take advantage of the talent available to him with kind of at the skill position?
Yeah, I think that's a team that's probably got to stay healthy from a depth standpoint, but front end talent is pretty good.
Central, you mentioned them, obviously probably the biggest beneficiary of transfers this year because with the coaching changes, had a lot of guys coming
Benson
over there.
Basically moved to Central.
Pretty much. With Deshaun Prince, obviously the wideout rat, hoping to see him on the field this year, healthy, able to play the full year. Kevon Newsome, one of the state's leading tacklers last year.
See, I'm a big fan. I think he's flying under the recruiting radar. He's sensational.
Yeah, Newsome at quarterback got some.
Yeah, BJ Newsome, who's just going to be a sophomore, right? Really got good arm talent. He's a two-sport guy. He plays baseball. Elijah Wayne.
Caleb Piper.
You got Harris on the outside.
Offensive line. Yeah. So
they have individually they have some really, really high end. Harris is a stud. I mean, they got a lot of really good players. We'll see how quickly they can kind of transition with all the new faces and new places. And listen, like the schedule, I think, is manageable for them early on. I think they'll open with Northwest. Then they get Gretna. They're at Lincoln High. They get a tough one at Elkhorn South. They're at home against North and Prep. And then they close with Papio, Benson, and Burke. Right? I like Papio. They got a chance to make some noise, but I mean, this is an interesting year one for Coach Mackey, Coach Muhammad, and those guys over at Central.
Yeah, run out of time here, so probably got to go rapid fire here. But who stands out to you from Lincoln? We hit mostly on the Metro here with this.
So I think I'm gonna start. I know Southeast is the easy choice. Kind of like Lincoln Southwest too, right? I think Carpenter's a fantastic player. They're battle tested. They got to figure out who's taking snaps. But
lost the quarterback, lost the running back, and that pretty much was their entire offense last year. But they do have athletes.
So that's the thing, right? That was kind of a difficult team to prepare against, but I think it will be So I think it'll be a Southwest Southeast kind of battle, and that's no disrespect to East, right? It's guys like Dash Bauman
back there, Dash Bauman.
No.
Cranston committed to Wyoming, really good player.
Yeah, so I think Lincoln will be very, very interesting, but may not be as individually star-studded as it was kind of a year ago.
And Grand Island Kearney, we'll get to you guys, I'm sure, at some point.
I tell you what,
forget you guys, obviously, two of the better teams in the state last year.
Oh, for sure. And both are on our schedule.
Yep.
Kearney, much like hoops, better have your attention. I think that's gonna be a good football team. A really good football team.
Give you an extra 10 minutes there, and still got a lot that we could have touched on, but we'll get to it as the season goes on. It's going to be a long season. Looking forward to maybe touch on some other classes next week and get into previewing the week 0 games and all that. But football season is here.
Yeah,
actually turn the corner.
We're here. We'll make an announcement on kind of what the schedule is going to be for when we can do NEB preps, but we won't miss a week. It'll be one of these days next week. It's Nebraska Preps Postgame. That's my man, Jacob Padilla. I am ODB. We'll be back next week.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.